Hello and welcome to Phoenix Cinema Podcast. My name is Chris Austin.
And I'm Ian Hawks.
And this is a podcast where we discuss what's showing at the historic Phoenix Cinema in East Finchley, North London. And this week, we're discussing Yorgos Lanthimos' latest movie, Kinds of Kindness. Full circle for this podcast in that we began with a Lanthimos movie. Should everything go completely tits up from here on out, then we might very well end with a Lanthimos movie, but here's hoping that does not happen.
Also, he deserves some kind of a gold star for having us talk about two full-length feature films within a 12-episode range or something? 12 or 13-episode range?
This guy is so prolific. I mean, Poor Things got a UK release this year, and next year he's already got this movie, I think it's called Begonia.
Movie. Yes, yeah.
And Plemons and Stone have been cast already. This guy is non-stop. Which is great for us, I guess. Oh, dude, what did you think?
I've been really excited for this conversation because I just have...
Me too.
Okay, I'll give you my fast take on it is I love Yorgos Lanthimos. Mm-hmm. I've loved him for a long time, and I've loved all of his movies, basically. And I do not think this is one of his strongest movies. It's not going into my top one. He has a couple movies in my top 100. He has a couple movies in my top 20. But this one will not go into that, sadly. He's still a direct. I still love pretty much everything he touches. I had a great time in the cinema. I think there are things going on in this movie that I adore, and I will just say that I love this movie for less even for the content of it, and more for that he just made it. I love that he clearly has a little acting troupe of people that he adores working with. Yeah. And he just made a movie with them, and it looks like they maybe didn't put too much time into it. It looks like they just made it, and somebody funded that, and somebody released that, and now he's just going to go and do it again. And the fact that it just feels like a consummate piece of art, if that makes sense. It just feels like this guy is not making movies to try to sell tickets or try to set up some kind of a franchise or try to appeal to some kind of big movie producer. This guy is literally just making whatever the hell he wants. Yeah. And he's good enough that it's working on a lot of levels, and people are excited about it, and we're going to get to see more of that. And I just think that's a good thing for cinema in general.
That's great. No, I really agree with this. Yeah. And, it's funny because it's not like he's doing one for them or two for them, one for me. Everything is for me.
They're all for him.
They're all for him. Yeah, dude. I agree with you. I mean, this movie is so strange. It's so compelling. It's so mysterious. It's so cynical. So this movie is it's an anthology movie. So it's broken up into three separate films, almost like three short films within the movie. So you have The Death of RMF, RMF is Flying, and RMF Eats a Sandwich. And their own stories, complete with end credits.
And the actors in them all play different characters every time.
All play different characters, yes, exactly. Yeah. So, I don't...
Except
do you
for maybe RMF, but that's maybe that's...
Right, okay, yeah. Do you want to, go through each section, each story, and just sort of talk about that on its own sort of merit?
Sure, yeah,
cool.
Totally.
So the first opening story in the film, The Death of RMF, I loved it.
Yeah,
I loved it.
I anticipated you would love this one. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's my favorite too. Actually, I think it's really good.
It's so good. And I think more than anything, it was just the character relationships that and the rules of the relationships, which I just found fascinating. I was literally on the edge of my seat the entire time. Just where is this going to go? What is this? It was super well done. Very strange, but I loved it. Yeah.
Well, and very the way that I think you got the exposition, where it's you see this guy who shows up at this mansion, and there's a strange scene there, and then you see Jesse Plemons in the car, and he gets in the accident, and then he's in the ambulance. I won't try to give away too much. He's in the ambulance, being like, "No, you should take me to the hospital. Like, I should be in the hospital for a couple days." And you're like, "What the hell is going on?" And he goes home and starts doing these things, and then and the way that suddenly this unfolds into this really fascinating web, and is engaging all the way throughout, and it was so this movie was co-written by, I'm gonna not pronounce the name correctly, but Efthimis Philippou.
Yes, he's worked with them before, right?
So that's the thing. So that's where I think this is interesting, because he wrote The Lobster, Killing of a Sacred Deer, and Dogtooth. He kind of wrote all of Lanthimos's kind of earlier films that kind of, that people started, I think, to really notice. And then but then The Favorite and Poor Things are both written by Tony McNamara, the playwright.
Oh, that's right. Mm-hmm.
And so I think that I think it's interesting, because I think this movie is very clearly, for me, a heralding back to the feeling of The Lobster, or the feeling of Killing of a Sacred Deer, of that extreme discomfort the whole time, and and extremely the way that those little details get, where you're like, why, there's so many questions of why people are acting the way they're acting, and then inevitably you get to a clinching point 20 minutes into the plot where suddenly you're like, oh, now I understand why, and it's way worse than I could have possibly imagined.
yeah, for sure. That's really interesting, because I think I said this on the last time we spoke about it with Poor Things, but I was never a Lanthimos fan, and I found those movies that you've mentioned, The Lobster and Killing of a Sacred Deer, even The Favorite, in a way, just kind of alienating in its... it operates on its own sort of frequency, you know what I mean? And I guess it was something I could just never tune into. So it's interesting that now, he's gone to, he's working with this writer again that's sort of heralding back to his early work, which which never worked with me. But immediately I was like, oh my God, I love this. So
I think there's a really cool thing going on here, and this could just be a lot of conjecture, but Emma Stone and Mark Ruffalo and a couple of the other actors who were on Poor Things talked to great extent about how they did 2 to 3 works of clowning work beforehand, of a lot of just they were just in rehearsal spaces doing practicing physical comedy together, and doing improv together, and doing just classic acting school exercises of we're mirroring each other, and we're building human machines with our bodies, and all those things that you do to just loosen up and get comfortable with people,
right?
And so I do think there's an interesting thing where I think some of Efthimis Philippou's writing, which I think feels has this kind of coldness to it, this kind of hands-offishness to it, this very there's structures of rules and dominance, and everybody needs to hold them and stuff. But I think now that's coming up against this cast of actors that I think from my perspective, Lanthimos is becoming increasingly playful with, and becoming increasingly just be silly for a little bit, or just really break some rules in your performance. And I think he's getting to this place with Emma Stone and with Willem Dafoe, I think in particular, where they have this this silliness and over the topness to them, and I think that combined with these moments in the script of kind of coldness and strain, I think is leading to really interesting stuff. And I think it's not quite I think in this movie it's still kind of I don't know if we've quite found the right way to mesh it. I don't know if this scene of really cold dialogue is meshing with this scene of Emma Stone dancing to pop music outside her car.
Dude, but let's get to that.
But at the same time, I'm but I love when it sings and when it's working together, it's a cool chemistry, and I hope that it continues to develop. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's a really great point. And I totally see why this acting troupe that you spoke about earlier, why they keep returning to his material. It seems as if you're an actor, this must be so incredibly freeing. Yeah. I think Plemons even spoke about it recently, saying it's such a gift to be able to work with Lanthimos and tell these kinds of stories in such an interesting way. You know, he just comes at it from an angle that just takes you by surprise. So, okay, I mean, again, it's spoiler-free talk here. I don't want to... So I love that first section of the movie.
The first one was amazing.
I'm in. Honestly, Ian, I could have watched an entire feature film length version of that.
I agree with that. No, I agree with that. I could have seen that story kept going. I really liked it a lot.
Totally. So now moving into RMF is Flying, our second story. And again, dude, it starts and I'm like, oh, I'm loving this. I am loving this. And it's such an interesting thing, actually, because when you're telling an anthology story, exactly what we just spoke of, it's a tricky thing because he started so strong. You become invested in the story and these characters, and then it comes to an end. Then you have to reset. Yeah. And that's tough. That's tough. But he held me. He held me going into this second story. And I thought, you know, so you've got Jesse Plemons as a cop whose wife, played by Emma Stone, has gone missing maybe on a trip recently and hasn't returned, and he's all out of sorts and I thought it was great. I thought it was really interesting until it got to the end of that story, and then I was just like, huh.
There was some I didn't quite pick up, I think, for me. And I'm generally pretty keen on, I think, picking up on, like, oh, I see the thematic threads you're weaving in and the visuals you might be paying off. And
sure.
And the middle story for me really did. I struggled to see the through line to kind of the final tension that we got to. I was really loving the tension of the beginning and even kind of the tension of the middle. Okay, and then when we got to the final tension, I was just like, oh, I don't know why we're here and why what this all kind of means. And again, like, it doesn't necessarily have to mean anything, but it didn't. Like, I think the final image of that piece is a strong final image if you're just looking at an image objectively, right?
For sure.
But I think that image for me didn't carry as much emotional weight as I would have hoped, because I'm like, I don't quite know what to make of this quite.
Oh, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. Yes. And so when we go to credits, I was just like, and the credit sequence is fucking hilarious, but you know, so,
I forgot about that. I forgot about that. I was in a theater I was in a really big cinema, and like not a really big cinema, but in my little cinema in town, it was the biggest screen. It's like screen number 1, so it was like the big one. But it was like a 1 p.m. matinee, and I'm there with like 4 to 5 other people, and nobody else was laughing, and I was having a really hard time with it because I was laughing a lot. But I was almost like making it uncomfortable because I was like, guys, this is a funny movie.
Exactly. But exactly. It's the same thing with Poor Things. I was laughing my head off in that movie and no one around me was. Actually, in this second segment, this was the second Lanthimos film in a row where people have walked out of the screening that I was in.
Really? When did they walk out? Was it the violence?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was that chopping moment, and they walked out, and I was thinking, okay, I get it, but also, what did you think you were walking into? I mean, I guess this is your general like movie-going audience who don't understand. You know, this is a Yorgos Lanthimos movie.
People had a lot less sex in this movie than I anticipated, which is saying a lot considering multiple people had sex on screen.
And okay, so let's talk about that sex scene, because it comes, and when it comes, I have to say, it's hilarious. Right? Yes. It's hilarious, and yet it is so shockingly hardcore pornography, only for a few moments, to the point where I had to think to myself, what was it like shooting on set that day? Because they are not using doubles here. This is our core cast engaging in these positions and these. Oh my God. I was like, dude, how do you get there with your? I thought that was absolutely. It was shocking and hilarious.
Yes. No. It was just the whole, like, that could have honestly just been a 5-minute short film. Just them sitting at the dinner table and him grieving his wife, and then being like, what if we watched one of the home videos, and then the 2 other people being like, I don't think that's a very good idea, and then they finally give in, and it just hard cuts to them all sitting on a couch
awkwardly, uncomfortably
watching a sex tape. I'm like, you could have you could have just cut that and then like just run it through festivals as a 6-minute short film, and I would have like adored it. Yeah,
100%. And but this is where you can see, like, Lanthimos does not shy away from anything.
From nothing.
He will show everything on screen, and that is like, I can see why some people might it's just not for them.
Yeah.
When
they had the scene, when they had like the self-mutilation scene, and the first camera angle of it was on Emma Stone's face. It's so funny because I was like, it's a Lanthimos film, so how long before we cut to actually because there's a moment where I'm like, if this was another director, they'd play the whole scene on just her face, right? That's right. And I'm like, but no. Like, that's not what we signed up for. Like, we...
Yeah. Oh, that's So the second, right. So again, loved it for the most part. And like you said, once we reached the end game of it, I felt a little shortchanged, a little let down. I wasn't quite sure what you were saying, what it all meant. Yeah. So, okay, fine. Now we head into the final section of the movie. RMF eats a sandwich. By the way, I can make sense of the first title. Couldn't make sense of these next two.
He's the helicopter pilot in the second one. That saves her from the island.
Oh, right.
So that's why RMF is flying, because he's the helicopter pilot.
Gotcha. Missed him. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so RMF eats a sandwich.
He plays. That might actually be another small minor critique of Story 2, is I actually, after seeing Story 1 and Story 3, I wish that RMF had played a larger role in. Not a larger role as in more screen time, but a more emotionally significant role. Like, the sure. role of RMF in 1 and 3 is perfect, is like ideal. And the fact that you kind of missed him in 2 doesn't surprise me, because it's kind of like he doesn't nearly carry the weight in the story that he does in stories 1 and 3.
It's almost like that is Lanthimos' own like joke that he's laughing at. That's having this RMF character in all 3 even. But yeah, we head into the final story of the film, and this Ian, I'm kind of mixed about. Yeah.
I like this one. I think I like this one more than 2.
Really?
But again, I have, we've talked a fair amount about how, like, I'm interested in kind of religious media in general and things like that. So I think for me, it kind of triggered the part of my head that was really interested in kind of people who become obsessed with ritual and people who become obsessed with beliefs, and how, and I think I related a lot to kind of these performance moments of like what it feels like to be on the inside of a community or then ostracized and on the outside, and how it can feel like your whole world is kind of falling apart, and that like the like Hunter Schafer's moment of wanting to be like wanting to kind of be this special person and wanting to, and then like not having. Anyway, there's parts of it that I think were just interesting to me, but I do agree that it was less kind of like I don't know, like it didn't have, I think, necessarily the same level of like a satisfying rollout of details of like, ooh, what's going on with this, and then there's a tension here, and there's like, it was a little bit more, I think, kind of right from the beginning you kind of see exactly what is going on here, and then you just kind of more or less sit with that for the next little bit, as opposed to kind of learning like increasing bits of information. Yeah,
that's an interesting point. That might be it, because it was hard for me to sort of pinpoint exactly what it was. And again, it's a difficult thing when you're doing an anthology movie, because you're asking me to invest in a third time to just reset, an hour and a half into a movie and just follow a completely different story and characters. And I'm not sure if I ever did feel as interested in these characters, even though I certainly thought the scenarios and the situations and certain scenes were definitely intriguing. I just never found myself really, I guess just invested is the word for it.
No, it was, I agree with you. It was a little funny where they, like, I almost found myself wishing, and I can understand kind of why this happened, but like, I almost found myself wishing that the person who played her, like, husband, who she was kind of separated from,
yes,
was someone in like the core troupe of actors, because I felt like that was actually a pretty big role, you know what I mean?
Pretty significant, exactly.
I can kind of understand Hunter. I was bummed that Hunter Schafer didn't get more screen time, because I actually like her a lot as an actress, but I can kind of understand, like, she plays the girl in the beginning who, in like just the very beginning in the morgue, who basically like they think she's the one and then she's not. Right. I can understand, like,
that's she from Euphoria?
Yeah, and she's done some other stuff recently. So like, I was a little bit like, oh, that's too bad you only got like 6 minutes in this movie, but like I it made sense for the script. But then when I was, because the actor is Mamadou, I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Oh,
Mamadou.
I don't know. Mamadou Athie. Yeah.
Is he in the third story? I don't think he is. I don't think he is.
Oh, he's the morgue nurse.
Oh, he's the morgue nurse. See, I just feel like he should have played her husband. I think that would have been way more interesting, because he's a great actor, and I feel like it would have kept that sense of like that like an acting troupe where everyone's playing the lead roles. Like I don't know. There were a couple funny little decisions there, and like I don't think they maybe gave enough for like Willem Dafoe to do either quite in the third one. There was just like a couple. I think it was really, the third one was a lot about Emma Stone's performance, which was lovely, and she was amazing. Mm-hmm. You know, and then also it's a bigger, and like Margaret Qualley and Jesse Plemons, like it's just kind of about the three of them. But I had kind of like, I don't know. I kind of, there was a certain thing that maybe made it feel like, oh, I don't know if this was quite the right story to round out this anthology quite.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe that's it too, Ian. Maybe it's the fact that just the way he uses the cast in terms of what we've been accustomed to. I suppose in the first story, Jesse Plemons is the out and out lead. And like you're saying, in the last bit, this is Emma Stone's turn to sort of take center stage. But even Plemons is reduced to a very tiny, almost insignificant role in that final. I expected more. I don't know. And I don't know, man. I just kind of feel like there were things, speaking to what Lanthimos, again, he doesn't shy away from things. There are some things he shows that maybe are unnecessary. I mean, there's this scene where Emma Stone's character basically, goes to have sex with Willem Dafoe's character, and he has this like close up of them kissing each other, an extreme close up that I thought was, I don't know how necessary seeing that is in the context of everything. So in a way, it just feels quite indulgent to me.
No, I know what you mean. I think especially where a story is so short, where it maybe doesn't have enough time to build on that stuff. I felt a little bit similar with like, oh, like, do we really, the first time we see Hunter Schafer, like, does she need to be naked if she's only going to be in this movie for 6 minutes? It's like, that feels a little bit of like I don't know. I just think as an actor, you would like, you'd look at the script and be like, okay, I've got 3 pages in this movie, and half of it I'm just standing still, not saying anything, naked. It's like, okay,
here we go.
I do agree. Where I'm like, oh, like, there's plenty of nudity in Lanthimos films. I'm not bothered objectively by nudity in films, but just like feeling like, I don't know if this story was quite had the pinnings to fully support the reason why you were putting a lot of these images in there,
100%. Like, I mean, again, going back to Poor Things, it's full of nudity and sex, but totally justified by the story it's telling.
Right. And I think like there were images that I found really interesting. Like, I liked all of her interactions with Margaret Qualley, playing both of the sisters, playing the first twin. I thought she's fascinating and kind of and terrifying as well. And then all of the stuff in the vet, like, I think was like really great. Just kind of the awkwardness of, with the dog, and she brings in the dog and is like, and then like just the image of her putting like her body on the vet scale, and it like lifts up, and it's very kind of like Christ imagery of her like draped over and stuff. Like I really enjoyed that kind of stuff, but I don't think I got a lot out of, when we went back to kind of where like the cult itself was like centered. It wasn't like I suddenly saw new imagery or new things that surprised me. Like, I was like, this seems pretty much like I would expect, like kind of like a, like there, like it wasn't, when you see them. I think when I first saw them in the morgue, and the way they were acting and the way they were behaving, I was like, this is very weird. And then I was like, I'm excited to see what the source of the weirdness is. And then for me, it turns out that like the source of the weirdness was like not as weird as they were. It was like, to some degree, they were almost the weird ones in the cult. And I'm like, oh no, I wish that they had showed up and then like everyone in the cult was way weirder than them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then like they're the normal ones or something. Like I think that would have been, I don't know.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from there. And actually, you know, again, maybe it's testament to Lanthimos and how interesting a storyteller he is. But maybe this final story could have benefited from a feature-length version as well. Maybe then I would have felt a bit more, you know, if he had time to really, you know, shade this in and fill it out.
Yeah, well, that's the way I felt about all these stories, which I think is cool. I mean, it's like, you know,
True.
you never want to have an anthology thing where you're like, oh, well, that one fully ran its course. Like I think every single one of these, I was like, no, you could have made this as a feature film. And I would not be surprised if that was some part of the conversation. I mean, you know, maybe him and the writer were just realizing, hey, we've got 3 of these ideas and we think they're really fun and we don't just have the time as filmmakers to make them all as feature films. Like, what if we just did them with an anthology cast and just did it all together, you know? And like, because I'm sure, I mean, like when I saw that the runtime was 2 hours and 45 minutes, I was, first of all, I was like, well, it's a long movie. But then when you break it down into 3 stories, I mean, that means each story is almost an hour long. I mean, most of these movies you could just add 30 to 40 minutes on and now it's a feature. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Like
That's
a short feature, but still a feature. So I do think they kind of got away with their cake on Ada 2 a little bit, where I think they probably had 3 ideas for feature films and they were like, let's like convince somebody to fund all 3 of them together.
Just combine it. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so I've got to say, I struggled coming up with a pairing for this one.
Yeah.
How did you get on with it?
Not well. I feel like right now I'm like looking at my list of movies to be like, what do I actually want to pair this with?
What do I want to do? Yeah. Well, I'll go first. I went through so many different things, and actually, this idea only occurred to me yesterday. So I would pair it with the limited series The Curse. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yes.
You heard of it?
I've heard of it, but I haven't watched it, but I really want to. I like everybody involved. I think Nathan Fielder, I think, is just brilliant. And yeah.
Did you watch The Rehearsal on HBO?
Oh, my God.
I didn't see it.
You have to watch The Rehearsal.
Oh, really?
We could do a year-long podcast just about The Rehearsal. It is
really
amazing.
Okay.
It's one of the like best. Like, it's not like one of the best pieces of cinema in that like it's not a movie, but it's like it's like a piece of art about making movies, and it's amazing for that. Yeah,
okay.
It's so good.
Well, I've got to say, so Nathan Fielder, he's the co-creator of this show with Benny Safdie. They both star in it with Emma Stone. And after watching this, I really want to go back and watch his The Rehearsal. But yeah, it's the reason I've paired it, I haven't finished it. There's 10 episodes. I'm only on episode 5. But it's genre defying. I don't know if this is a comedy. I don't know if this is a drama. It is so tense. It's so awkward and uncomfortable to watch at times. And Fielder and Stone, they basically play a married couple who are trying to make a reality show about their role within a community that they live in. And they're like housing, these underrepresented, like these minority groups in their community. And yet they don't come out looking too great in this. You know, they're this white couple that are just, and you see their relationship isn't particularly great. And it's just, it's a little slimy. And yet I could see it condense this, these 10 hours into one. And I could see it totally being a part of an anthology movie, like, Lanthimos telling this kind of story in Kinds of Kindness. So I highly recommend it. It's certainly a fascinating watch.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've been wanting to watch it for a long time.
Great.
I don't know what to know what to pair this with. I'll say two things. I don't think either of them they're not pairings I'm most proud of, but they're two things that I like. there's a comedy sketch series on Netflix called I Think You Should Leave.
I've heard of it.
It's hold on, the creator's name's escaping me right now. Tim Robinson.
I'm not a fan.
You're not a fan of Tim Robinson. That's fine.
No.
That's fine. That's fine.
Go ahead.
I don't have to go on and on about this. I think I will say this. One thing we didn't quite talk about. I do think that the film overarchingly has an interesting examination of, I mean, what's in the title, kinds of kindness, and this, like, I love that they use what's the name of the very popular song they use in the opening credits, that like some of them want to abuse you, some of them want to...
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know the title, but yeah.
If you look at the lyrics of Sweet Dreams Are Made of This, right? But like you look at the lyrics of that song, some of them want to use you, some of them want to get used by you, some of them want to abuse you, some of them want to be abused. Like, it's shit. I think, like, he kind of just lays out, I think, what like the premise of the of the film is a little bit, which is just like these relationships of dominance and people who want to be taken advantage of and people who want to take advantage of others, and how that provides either a kind of false sense of fulfillment or in sometimes a real sense of fulfillment, or anyways. And I think I think You Should Leave, for what it's worth, with Tim Robinson, has elements of him. I think he's deeply interested in like social norms and like why people act the way that they act, and then like when somebody's not acting that way, how it can be like very uncomfortable. So I think that's interesting. Okay. I'll mention a second one. There was a movie that came out, a little indie film that came out that I feel like did not get a lot of attention. It's called Duel. Duel, as in like Dual, and it came out in 2022. And it stars what's her name? Karen Gillan or Gillian? I'm not quite sure how to pronounce her last name. And it also has Aaron Paul, who you would know from like Breaking Bad. Little film. I didn't get a lot of attention. I really enjoyed it. The premise of the film, this is not giving away too much, is that like basically if it's kind of like a heady sci-fi a little bit, but it takes place in like a very contemporary sci-fi. The world looks like our world, but essentially if you're about to die from a terminal illness, you can have a clone of yourself made so that you can continue to live, basically. But then if by some chance you don't die from your terminal illness and you stay alive, it's illegal for two of you to be like two versions of you to be alive in the world. And so then the government sets a mandated date where you have to duel your clone to the death.
Oh, what? What?
So like,
this is amazing.
This like very kind of like introverted, quiet, kind of depressed woman like gets like cancer, and she's very young, and it looks like she's going to die, and so she has a clone of herself made, and then spends like a month or two, like they encourage you to like get the clone made like a couple months before you're supposed to die, so that you can like integrate them into your life and like introduce them to your family and like and so she does this work, and then she doesn't die, and then she hires Aaron Paul, who's like a self-proclaimed like combat expert to teach her how to like kill people, because then they're gonna fight to the death like in a year.
How have I not heard of this movie? What?
It's kind of awesome. Like it's definitely not like you can tell that it's kind of made by some younger filmmakers. Like it's not, that it doesn't have necessarily all of the perfect polish of maybe a movie made by some more experienced craftspeople. But I think it's really fascinating. It's a really fun watch. It's nice and short. It's like an hour and 34 minutes. And there's something about the way that it approaches, I think, like violence and loneliness and again, kind of like the awkwardness, like especially reminded me actually of the second one, when there's kind of this element of like someone who looks like a person but then is not a person and just these conversations that are like really halting. It's cool. So
very cool. Okay,
that'll be my better recommendation of my two. Will be
Okay.
Duel from 2022.
Excellent.
It's fun.
It's going
It's pretty
straight
fun.
into my list, dude. I want to watch that straight away. That sounds so good.
Yeah, there's some great scenes. If you watch it, we should definitely talk about it afterwards, because there's some stuff that really cracks me up in it.
Definitely. Okay. And I have to say, of all the pairings I was thinking of, most of them sprouted from that second story.
Yeah.
They were all that. Maybe what you said earlier in terms of like imagery, it just felt like that was so strong, and so that's where my mind was going too. Anyway,
that's great.
This was great, man. This is I could talk Lanthimos with you for forever. But thank you, pal. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
And I guess we will catch you all on the next one. Special thanks to Phoenix Cinema, as always. Our music is by Stefan Krieger, and our episodes are edited by Noah Anderson. Guys, if you want to watch a movie, head to the Phoenix Cinema. But before I meet you there, myself and Ian, we're just going to talk about palm trees for a bit.